Hello everyone, welcome back to Archangel RC. I want to turn your attention to a relative newcomer today, the ZOHD Drift FPV Glider, a possibly sub 250 grams model with quite a bit of capability under the canopy. At a first glance, it does not seem like anything special, certainly no breakthroughs in appearance, but when you dig into the details is when you begin to see the awesome design solutions implemented into it, and to be honest, it was a pleasure to figure them out and see them implemented on a scale like this. The tail and the way it mounts to the fuselage is particularly interesting and cleverly designed in my opinion, and allows for very quick assembly and disassembly for storage and transport, and same goes for the wings. The wing servo connectors were accurately installed and were so convenient. The plane does not have a rudder, which is a pity, but unlike the Reptile Dragon, the Drift fares a lot better without one and looks better in the turns too. ZOHD do state in the manual that the plane is not to be flown above 50 km an hour, and it is not designed for aerobatics and high-speed maneuvers. It was designed for gliding and relaxed flying, and I have to admit, it does that exceptionally well. Don't get me wrong, it will handle gusts and fast winds and some turbulent conditions, but definitely feels more at home on the calmer days, although observing a bit of caution with the sticks, you can have some fun with it without breaking it. I saw some people reinforcing the rear end of the wings, but if you go easy on the sticks, you wouldn't need to do that even if you do some aerobatics. Also, after the whole binary fiasco, I needed this fun session as sort of a confidence boost that I still know how to work those sticks. I did get the full FPV version of the Drift, which included the ZOHD KoPilot and their all-in-one camera unit, and I managed to put everything together and set it up just the day before I went to the seaside. So, maiden flight was at the beach, naturally. Did not use the KoPilot auto launch feature, but full up trim from the radio and the stabilized mode did pretty much the same job and did it very well. I am happy to report that in a dozen flights since then, the KoPilot, even though it still requires a bit of tuning, has performed absolutely perfectly, and return to home has worked reliably every time, even saving the plane from getting lost on the maiden flight when I actually went above those clouds, which turned out to be lower than expected, but the bloody DVR had stopped recording before that. Once above the clouds, scenery was awesome, the wind had taken me inland, and at some point the plane went behind the trees from my point of view, and I lost the video since it also turned out that I'd been flying at 25 milliwatts this whole time. Anyway, flipped the switch and in a bit the video showed up, and I realized that up until that point I've actually had no idea where the plane was, so thanks to the KoPilot it came back safely. Over the next couple of days, I did have some great fun with it at the beach, and I was actually quite surprised how far this thing could go on those 25 milliwatts. Granted, I am using the triple feed patch array on my monitor, but still very clear image and a nice view angle from that camera, although I would like to upgrade that to an HD recording camera later down the line. Already thinking about that, and I do have a camera in mind which I will have to sadly take off of the Phoenix 2400. It is unfortunate, but in my line of work, old gear moves over to new planes more often than the other way around. So getting back to the Drift, I did consider a few options for a battery, 2S lithium-ion which seemed quite heavy, and 2 LiPo options, one of which gave me an all-up weight of under 230 grams, which was quite impressive, but flight times would have been quite short unless I glide for a bit, and at that weight probably would not be too hard to find even small thermals to help it stay afloat. This plane had proven that it simply will not tip stow, manual or stabilized mode, so it would be all too easy to hunt for those thermals even without a motor. Overall flight characteristics were good, although manual mode certainly does require some expo and perhaps some dual rates because the plane is quite agile. End of the day, I went with a heavy 2S lithium-ion battery for two reasons. I was going to be flying at the coast, so thought being heavier would be a bit better in windy conditions, and that 3000 mAh capacity is just so seductive. Just couldn't resist it. Pushing the battery as far back into the fuselage as it would go still wasn't enough to balance it at the marks, so I had to add some lead weight to the tail, same kind used for balancing car wheels, and then it was just right. However, turns out this plane still needs about 2 mm up elevator to not dip on takeoff or in general during flight, so keep that in mind. Somebody did mention the CG could go another 5 mm forward of the markings, but I have not yet tested that. Seems to fly pretty decent as it is now. In terms of flight endurance with the lithium-ion battery pack, I can't say that I've done a proper flight to test that, but cumulative time from a few flights has been just over 50 minutes, so I guess 1 hour is possible, and if 3500 mAh cells are used, pretty much guaranteed. Even at just over 290 grams all-up weight and 2S battery, the plane takes off easy enough and has authority in the air, can gain altitude well at a high angle, so I'm happy with the stock motor and prop. During one of the evenings, I did have some fun around the pier and was happy to see that the plane would go where I'd pointed, even when I have to fit it through a narrower space, but then I gave it some more up trim so it would gain altitude, set the throttle a bit higher and just use the ailerons to keep it close, and it did manage to get quite high. I'm not sure exactly of the altitude, seeing as the KoPilot has no OSD and it cannot provide such info, which is one of the drawbacks of keeping it simple, but I'd guesstimate at least 700 to 800 meters high, as this did go on for a while. Weather was absolutely brilliant and calm, which made it okay for such altitudes. On the way down, I helped it a little bit because I really was getting quite bored with this flight. A lone pier is apparently not enough to keep my interest for long. Low-hanging clouds or nearby mountain peaks are a whole different story, but either way, I am glad the weather was what it was, so I was able to do this flight. Landings for this plane, especially on the beach near all that sand, were like this. I'd aim it at myself and catch it while it was flying by. The tail boom proved an exceptionally convenient place to grab it. Works well every time. Overall, I did have quite a bit of fun around that beach, going from one end to the other. It is a beautiful place and I only wished I had an HD recording camera on board. But that will also come along a bit further down the line. Really like how the plane flies and it does seem to be quite stable. Also, the KoPilot seems to be doing a good job stabilizing it. I did tune it a bit. The elevator is pretty much perfect, only need to adjust the roll a bit and it should be even better, but even with all the wind there, it fared pretty darn nice. The video is actually watchable. I only wish the DVR had not failed me during that flight above the clouds the first day. Those were some marvelous views indeed. Upon returning from my short vacation, I handed over the reins to what I considered to be an almost complete beginner. Her only prior experience flying a plane was a small part of this flight with the Phoenix when it was a few kilometers away, and I let her take it around the clouds for a spin, but that's about it. Certainly the first time flying line of sight, and to be honest, especially after the first few minutes, she got a feel for it and things started to look very good. True, still in stabilized mode, but nowadays it is easy to start this way and later on progress to manual mode, so I hope we will get there eventually. For being a first time, I was quite happy with how she was able to fly the plane, and the drift did good too, calm and mannerly at all times. At some point we moved over to the FPV feed, and after she flew via the monitor for a while, she said that it was a bit easier that way, which is not surprising at all. Funny thing is, unlike most women, there was very little confusion which way is right and which way is left, which made giving instructions a lot more enjoyable and easy by not having to say, turn right now. No, turn the other right. Anyway, had a good deal of fun, and at the end even landed it herself after a brief instruction on what to do, but the drift was just stellar as well. The plane won my affections in a few ways. First was definitely the design and a few clever and yet simple ideas that were well utilized to make it as compact and easy to use as possible. Then there was the space, because as tight as things are right now in there, having so much space in a plane as small as this one is probably a first, at least for me, and it is quite impressive how much space you have. Replace the KoPilot with one of those mini Matek boards that have all the goodies in there, and you'd have a full-blown current sensing, OSD, etc. the works in the same small package, even autonomous missions if I'm not mistaken. For the time being I will not do that because I do love the ease of use and setup of the KoPilot, and I do believe it is very beginner friendly, which I believe is the main idea, as well as just being hassle free to deal with. Yes, I do miss the OSD, but you know, simplicity does come at a price. I know some people have been having issues with it, but as it turns out, when you are done tuning it with the setup board, you have to disconnect it while the KoPilot is still powered for it to save the settings. Disconnecting it from the KoPilot after it is powered off will make it default to stock settings next time you power it on, and I guess cause it to behave weirdly. So far I still have the board connected to the autopilot and I'm still considering removing it, but I might have to when I end up upgrading the camera and using a standalone video transmitter unit. Anyway, this seems to be all for now. I will have an update for this one for sure when I'm done with the upgrades, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, I will be working on the next project, and until then, links for all items shown and used can be found in the description below, and buying literally anything through them would support this channel at no additional cost to you, and you will have my eternal gratitude as this is my full-time job. Another way you can support me is Patreon, the link is also there, and I would like to say a big thank you to all the people who have supported me so far in any way and would continue to do so. If you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, please feel free to like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to also hit that bell button so you can be notified when I upload a new one. Also consider following me on Facebook for more regular-ish updates. Happy and safe flying, and I will see you in the next one.